Marisha here. Today's video is going to be geared sort of specifically toward people who are considering doing study abroad as a postgrad, because I'm going to be talking about the specific kind of admin and research that you need to do once you've been accepted to a university, but before you actually show up. The first thing that you need to do is take care of your student visa. And in order to do that, you will be given, at least in the UK, a CAS number, a CAS number from your university. And this is just the evidence that you need to prove you have indeed been accepted into university and you are coming to the country to study. Now, the university will not release that number to you until you've put down kind of like a down payment on your tuition. So just be aware of that as you're planning your finances. I think particularly if you're taking out a loan, to make sure that you have access to that money kind of right away, because if you can't get your CAS number, then you can't do your student visa, and you need that before you can do anything really. So the visa itself is really simple to fill out. You just go onto the government website, find the form, fill it out. If you got yourself accepted to a postgrad program, you shouldn't have any problems filling out the visa. Be aware though, again, financially, there's going to be a visa fee. And at least in the UK, there was an additional fee for NHS. So I have health coverage while I'm over here. Then I acknowledge that you might feel a little bit of anxiety while you're waiting to hear back on the results of your visa application, even though if you got accepted into a university, you shouldn't have any problems getting your visa approved. It still can be a little bit of nerve-wracking until you actually have the visa in hand. So in the meantime, to help take your mind off of that, and also because you need to do this anyway, start looking at some of the other things you need to do to get your ducks in a row before you can actually leave. One of the things that I would recommend is that you look for scholarships, because free money is free money. But just so that you're aware and you go into this with eyes open, it will be difficult to find scholarships because you are a postgrad and you're doing your studies abroad. The vast majority of scholarships that I found precluded me because I was a postgrad and or because I was not studying at an American university. I personally did not get any scholarship money for this. And that was really frustrating because I went into it thinking, like, of course I'm going to be able to get some scholarships because my undergrad was almost entirely paid for with scholarships. Like, I'm the scholarship queen. But in all of my researching, I found that, like, okay, well, most of them are for undergrads and most of them are for American universities. And, you know, some of them where that wasn't an issue, I still wasn't eligible because they were for STEM, or there was some other thing that sort of disqualified me from the scholarship. And the few scholarships that I did apply to, most of them were drawings. You'll discover that there are scholarship websites out there, and they can be really frustrating because you have to jump through a lot of hoops in order to access, sometimes to even be able to see the scholarships that they have available. And then other times, to be eligible for some of their scholarships, the website itself has scholarships. Um, and a lot of them will have like a monthly scholarship, but it's just a drawing. And so, there's thousands of people entering this. And so it's really, the odds aren't really in your favor. But I can't say don't do it because it doesn't cost you anything. And who knows, you might get lucky and be the person who's drawn for that scholarship. And again, you may find something that does suit you. Maybe you are going to be majoring in STEM, or maybe you're a person of color, or you're gay, or there's something about you that like means that there are other scholarships that are available to you that weren't necessarily available to me. So I'm never going to say don't look, don't bother, because absolutely it is worth your time to look for free money. Then the other thing that you're going to want to do is lock down your housing. And here I would strongly recommend that you go with university housing, because looking for housing in another country while you are still in your home country is really difficult. And it also leaves you open to getting scammed. And even if you are confident that, you're able to get something legitimate and you're not being scammed, there are, I think, a lot of variables with renting that you don't have to worry about if you're doing university housing, right? So, for example, if I were going to rent an apartment in in London, it's not just rent that I have to worry about, but also utilities. And, if you don't live there, you don't necessarily have the best idea of how much utilities cost. And especially the fact that utilities can fluctuate from month to month, right? You don't know until you get there, like how cold is your building? How much are you going to want to crank up your heat in the winter? Or, does your building even have AC? And the answer is if it's in the UK, probably not. And so, kind of what's it going to be like in the summer? Are you going to have to buy a bunch of fans or, whatever? Um, and then, council tax. You never heard of council tax as an American. What is that? And then just how all these other kind of variables that if you go with university housing, you don't have to worry about because they quote you a price that is exactly what you're going to pay for the month. No surprises. And so you can budget exactly how much it's going to cost you for the duration that you're going to be there. You also know that it's going to be clean and it's going to be safe because the university is not going to risk its reputation by having rundown, dilapidated student accommodation. No, it's not going to be the Ritz, but honestly, if you are like picking up and moving to get your postgrad, you probably can't afford to rent a place like that would be this like amazing apartment either. At least in the dorms, they're going to be really mindful about their like not being vermin, right? They're going to be really like on top of like the pest control issue. They're going to make sure everything is like up to code and is safe. Most dorms are going to have like a front desk where you have to show ID or something to even get into the building. So you're not going to have to worry about weirdos like wandering in. And if you have an issue with, the person who lives next door to you in the dorm, you are going to have like recourse. Like if your neighbor is, doing drugs and throwing wild parties, then you can file a complaint and it's going to get taken care of right away. That's not necessarily going to be the case if you are, living in an apartment complex. Um, and just in general, dorms are going to have a quiet policy. They're going to say at a certain time, the expectation is that people are quiet because these are all students and they need to study. Or they might even have separate areas that are set aside as study rooms. So I understand that as a postgrad, most likely you are doing this after you have been a professional for a while. And so, you are not in your 20s anymore. And probably the idea of living in a dorm again is not super appealing. And yes, it is weird. It does come with some challenges. And I might talk about that in another video. But I would say that it's probably worth it to just save yourself a lot of the stresses that can come with trying to find other housing. And then, the other thing with student accommodation is it's going to be close to where you're studying, so you can walk to class. And that is a great thing to be able to do to save on transportation costs and to also really know exactly how long it's going to take because you walk and there's no variable of, well, what happens if my bus is late or there's a tube strike, right? Like, and the trains aren't running. You don't have to worry about any of that either. So, really, really strongly recommend that you look into student housing. But, if you want to go with something else, go for it. And I know people who have. I ran into international students who were renting apartments and it worked out fine for them. So it is doable. I'm just saying what my recommendation would be. If you do decide to go with student housing, you will still have some research. It won't take you as much research or work, I don't think, as if you're trying to find other accommodation. So that's another thing to consider. But you will have different options within student housing. In the US, at least the college that I went to for my undergrad, all of the dorms were the same. Or maybe not each of the dorms, but all of the rooms within my dorm were exactly the same. Every single room, same layout, same size. That is not the case here. You'll have one building where there's three or four room options. The layouts are different. Some of them, the sizes are different. And so you'll have different costs, right? You can pay a little bit more if you want a bigger room, or take a smaller room if you want to save some money. And then you also have options between different dorms of kind of what other amenities are there? What are the common areas like? Does this dorm have a game room or a TV room? Kind of what does the laundry facility look like? They're all going to have laundry facilities, but they're a little bit different. And for me, the biggest thing was food. Is this a dorm where I can do my own cooking? Does it either have a kitchen that students can use? It's like a shared kitchen. Or does it have an option where I can get kind of an ensuite room where I have my own little kitchenette and my own bathroom? That's ultimately what I went with. And that worked out really well for me. I really liked that. Um, but you might decide, no, I want a place that has a cafeteria and a meal plan because that's one less thing I have to worry about. Like, I don't want to have to cook for myself. I don't want to have to worry about washing dishes and doing grocery shopping and whatever. I can just show up and eat, and then I don't, and like focus on my studies or whatever. So be thinking about the kind of life that you want to be leading while you are living in a strange country and focusing on your studies, and take that into consideration when you are looking at your accommodation options. One thing that I will warn you about is you will run into sort of various ways in which life is different for a postgrad than for an undergrad. I already talked about scholarships, right? There's way more scholarships for undergrad, but it will or may affect your housing options. For me, a lot of the housing contracts with student accommodation are geared for undergrads, and so they're only 9-month contracts. But as a postgrad, I was going to school year round, right? I had summer lectures. I was meeting with dissertation supervisors, working on my dissertation. I needed a year-long contract, but that wasn't offered to me when I went through the housing process for my school, or really it's all of University of London. My school didn't have its own specific dorm. I had to list sort of my choices of like, this is what I want, and I actually got like my fourth choice. My first three choices were at a dorm that offered a year-round contract. My fourth choice, it was like a 9-month contract with the understanding that I would then have to apply for an extension. And what ended happening for me was I had 9 months at this particular dorm, but then it was closing for the summer for renovations, and I had to apply to move to a different dorm. And this new dorm, first of all, that was a little bit of anxiety because who knows if I'm going to get accepted? Like, what if there are more people applying than there are rooms? It turns out that wasn't an issue because I don't think that my whole floor was filled with people when I moved into this new dorm. But what it did mean is that I was now in a dorm where I did not have an option to cook for myself. I had to have a meal plan. I couldn't even opt to just pay like for room and just be like, no, I don't want the meal plan. Can I pay a cheaper rate? That wasn't even an option. This is what you're paying, and that includes a meal plan. So I felt sort of obligated to go to the cafeteria and eat some of the meals, but they were disgusting for the most part. Not all of them. Like breakfast was okay because I could get eggs and bacon and like eggs and bacon like every day. But um like the lunches and dinners were not great. And a lot of times I just opted not to eat there and just figure out something else, do takeout, get it like a salad from Tesco or some other meal deal from a grocery store or something. Um, but just be aware that you may run into that. You may run into, fewer options because you're a post grad, or options where you kind of have to do that, like, okay, well, I'll do 9 months here and then I have to find something for the summer or whatever. Um, it was not a great experience to have to do that because it meant I had to move. right, dorm. So I'm like packing up and I'm moving to this new dorm. And again, the eating situation was really bad. And then at the end of 3 months, I had to move again because my contract is up. And I went through a period of homelessness. I'll talk about that in a different video. But I do want to be completely honest when I'm making these videos that overall, my experience here has been great. I'm really glad that I did this, but it was not without its challenges. So I'm going to be completely honest about the challenges that I faced while being here as well. But those are the main things that you need to take care of. The only other advice that I would give is I would recommend doing a little bit of research before you leave about your neighborhood. Once you get your housing locked down and you know what your address is, plug it into Google Maps and just kind of explore the map and see what is available in your neighborhood. Are there museums, art galleries, fun things to do? That's really good to kind of get a list of things that are close to you that you can get excited about. Like, oh, I'm really excited. For me, I was living like 4 blocks from the British Museum, but also close to where I was living because I was in Bloomsbury. I had like the Charles Dickens house and the Petrie Egyptology Museum and the Grant Zoology Museum and the Foundling Museum. There was a lot of kind of little lesser known things in my area that I just had this list and I was like, this is great. I'm going to kind of explore these things and get to know my area. But then, sort of on a practical side, look for what are some restaurants that look like places you would be excited about visiting, or places where maybe it is fast food, but you want that information because let's face it, there are times when we're just really tired, we don't want to cook, and all we want is like a burger or like some cheap eats at like midnight or something. And knowing that that's around and what's available can be sort of comforting before you even get there to know, okay, these are the things that I have access to. Look for grocery stores, look for the closest post office. For me, I also looked up what are some area churches. So I had a list before I even landed in London of churches that I was going to visit and try out. That will help ease a little bit of your anxiety because you'll feel like you have some sense of your neighborhood before you even get there, and you'll kind of feel a little bit more in control of knowing, like, yep, I know that there is a grocery store, 3 blocks from me, and I know, where I can send my first like postcards home or whatever. That's my advice. Just some heads up of sort of the less exciting aspects of preparing and getting your ducks in a row before you even get to your, country of study. Like, subscribe, tell your friends how gnarly this channel is, and I'll see you next time.